Welcome back to the Hermetic Podcast. We're back on with Hadron, and he wants to talk a little bit more about Skinwalker Ranch and a few other paranormal sites. So, how would you like to get started?
Well, I'll just get started. So I heard that Skinwalker Ranch has gone through a few owners, and the activity's been there for at least recorded by 200 years by locals. And what it is that if anyone's kept up with it, it's a big force field about 2,000 feet wide. It's a perfect circle. Some of that circle's entrenched in the dirt. And the issue with that is I think it's a big entity. I think it's literally a giant entity, and it's part of the it's alive, and it also these entities can also play as gateways. So I do think that there's more than one kind of intelligence interacting there, but I wouldn't quite put it as extraterrestrial. I like to tag it as ultra terrestrial. And so what's happening is I've heard that there's old owners back in the 70s where they even had things relocated in their kitchen, trickster elements where something they come back and something's missing when they know where they placed it, or some bulls got placed in a very tight area, and like just abductions and replacing of things. Tool found real high up in a tree. Cameras mutilated. Lots of cows mutilated. And what's weird, it looks like it's been hacked up and like torn apart by an instrument, not like bitten into. So if anyone's seen my other videos or watched it, I do think that these are balls of light that can compare with where there's UFOs. Well, these things are intelligent. They can be anywhere from like a few centimeters, few inches wide, all the way up to like a kilometer wide, and I think they're worldwide. The great disclosure of UFOs. That this is the thing. That this is the disclosure. It's not necessarily all about aliens out there, which is possible, which is a separate category where the Pentagon, even back in 2001, let the media know that they had 57 different specimens of DNA on file of extraterrestrials. I think it's gone up to like 60 some, maybe up to 69. But anyway, a lot of the aliens look mostly like us, but with just different regular um,
So,
colors of skin.
we were t-
Go ahead.
so you were talking about Skinwalker Ranch and some of the phenomena present at that ranch, and you also mentioned balls of light. How does this all tie together?
Well, I was tying it together where I was mentioning that the extraterrestrials with different skin colors like us, but a full broader spectrum than just a black person, white person, all that. They have like 90% color fill-ins like greens, blues, and all kinds of other colors. That's kind of going to be separate than the kind of things I'm talking about. I'm talking about ultra-terrestrials that don't require extraterrestrials from another world. Now, there may be dimensions closed within our enclosure, uh, but I think they're right here. It's more like a measurement of different frequencies. So I think Skinwalker Ranch is the most studied paranormal area perhaps in the world. But I want to give it a locations. We're going to tie it together so there's not like a rush subject. There's also called the Valley of Hasdalen. It's in Norway. There's a mountain there in a valley, and it's been going on for like many, many, many decades, a paranormal phenomena, and perhaps centuries. I also think that this could be a play an inspiration of where the Norse gods came from. Yeah, I'm going to propose that these things are actually gods in the classical sense. Now, Christians may want to classify them as demons, whatever, you know. But I just think that the reclassification is kind of naive. Though the ancient world worshipped these gods, and it's interesting that the ancient world in the Near East worship Baal, but the word Baal and Baal, ball of light. That what do you think is worthy of worship unless they saw something come out of the storms? These balls of light love storms. They love electrical activity and plasma activity. The modern military, if you've seen any releases here in the last several months, these balls of light can travel with airplanes, zip across skies, do all kinds of anomalies, and there's even been different shapes. ghostly figures, kind of look a large tic tac, and so what these things is these things defy laws of physics. They've been known to come out of oceans, go back into oceans, and they can do whatever they want. And I think it freaks everybody out, all the militaries around the world. And because at first in World War II they call them Foo Fighters. They play with the pilots with all sides, not just ours. And everyone at that time, everyone thought it was maybe a secret weapon of the other side of the enemy. Well, these things have been around for thousands of years, if not longer. And what it is I want to list like different locations. There's also called Clearview. It's north of Colorado Springs, Colorado. It's called Clearview Ranch. There's Sedona, Arizona. I've heard in Sedona there's vortexes that are causing people to have time distortions. They repeat the same day the next day. And so, plus there's all kinds of UFO activity, creatures. Every single one of these locations all have these kinds of things in common. And Sedona, Arizona can be a conjuring place for conjuring entities, because that could be also a gateway. It's a grid point where two grids cross each other. There's another one called Bradshaw Ranch, and that's like outside Sedona, Arizona by 12 miles. There's a place called Nahani, Nahanni Valley. That's in Canada. There's another one called Stardust Ranch. That's in Arizona. Another one called Buffalo Ranch. That's in Colorado. There's also Mount Shasta in California. And a lot of interesting things. UFOs are seen at these key locations, and very weird, like, phenomena of people walking around that should not even exist there. They look like they're from other worlds. They look like they're from other times. There's also Mount Kailash. They say is a seat of where Shiva lives in India, and it's highly magnetic. But people have seen kind of weird gurus walking around there, like very advanced beings. I mean, people of Hinduism and people internationally visit there, and they say it's a holy site for Shiva. Just a couple of areas. There's also called Mount Hermon in Syria. That's legendary with so-called fallen angels. The Watchers came. See, that's an interesting thing. The word egregore is just a modern version of the word Watchers. And then there's Mount Uritorco. That's in Argentina. That's a big kind of supernatural things that happen there, just like on Skinwalker Ranch. So these beings of light, I think, have hovered around various other mountains. And I think even cavemen may have even known about this. And I think this is probably the true inspiration of the gods. Not the only way the gods. Like, I do think some gods are worshipped human beings. But these gods are the true inspiration that have gone back since the dawn. And so the worship of these lights. Now let me tell you this. So let's wrap it up together on what we're looking for here. So when I do think that you can see it over any kind of countryside, major city. If you have an infrared camera, they mostly fly around that spectrum. Sometimes most of their activities naked, the naked eye cannot see it unless you really stare off into space and look at. Sometimes you see disturbances of like just entanglements up there, but if you have an infrared camera, you can see them. And some people on YouTube have filmed them, and man, it's flooded with busyness all over the place. You can tell the difference between them and comets because these things turn around. Lots of times they fly in straight lines. Sometimes they'll turn around and curve around, but their activity in our atmosphere probably anywhere from like 5 miles to 30 miles up in the air. I remember many years ago after the 4th of July, I think the 4th of July does stimulate some activity. So when it's all done, if you're in the country, you can see things better than if you're in the city. But if you are around 4th of July and you're done with it, watch what's up in the sky. Let's look up 20, 30 miles who knows, maybe 50 miles. It's hard to say how high these guys go, but they go all the way up, hundreds of miles in the atmosphere, and NASA has filmed them. These things can be up to a kilometer wide. I think Wilhelm Reich has probably battled some of them. Some of them can be as probably as wide as 5 miles wide. Looks like an eye in the center, an eye or a mouth. You ever seen that movie Nope? It's kind of like a plain version of this thing where it looks like a flying kind of praying mantis UFO that likes to abduct horses and harass people. So that show does kind of strike a chord, but these things have more plasma energy onto them, and I do think that they can take life and they can seed life. I do see them as um, they would naturally exist, and ball lightning has been seen as coming from thunderstorms, and some ball lightnings show like as if they're brand new life forms. Who knows? Some of them could be ancient or some of them could be new, but they do show intelligences. And these things are dangerous. They've been known to mutilate cats and dogs, uh, vaporize dogs, um, causing cancer in human beings where, boom, they flash and they get face burns and then they end up dying of cancer. So these things are not anything to play with. Now, there's Seasteady Ranch, which is located in Washington State. It's a known tourism, and these lights like to demonstrate. They like to be admired, and they show off all the time. They seem to be more friendly. I heard in one case a few years ago, one of the tourists, one of the lights came down out of the sky and turned into a fairy, and it's exactly what the tourists wanted to see. So these things can actually imitate what you fantasize about.
So
They
why
can
do you think
shapeshift.
some of these places have so-called friendly entities and some of them seem to be more like Skinwalker Ranch where the phenomena seems to be more hostile?
Well, it's going to vary just like human beings. Not all human beings are friendly, so it's probably got the same moral compass as human beings.
So you
And
mentioned you did mention earlier that you could see some of these entities or phenomena using infrared light. Do you think that this could be similar phenomena to what pilots and soldiers would sometimes see in Vietnam when we had red lenses for our night vision as opposed to green? I'm not completely sure exactly what they changed, but I heard that a while back we had some red lenses or some technology that allowed us to see in red instead of the green that we're used to, and they saw some pretty horrific things over there at times. Do you think these two ideas are interlinked, or do you think they're a bit different?
they're interlinked. Now, the lights are just probably like the most glorious one of the guys. You've probably got some uglies, some lower imp kind of creatures, things like that. But it brings our fairy tales and mythologies to life when you actually explore it. I think mainstream science was afraid of it for years because, if you can't explain it, well, if you can't categorize it and it's out of your explanation, you know, the same thing goes for Bigfoot. Bigfoots have been seen as coming in and out of orbs. Um, so, and now there's this one group of guys. It's called Dougie. I want to say Dougie. Uh, let's see, Pereira, something like that. But anyway, I may have the last name wrong, but he's making YouTube videos, and he went to Skinwalker Ranch, and he has like a little story I can sum up in less than 5 minutes. He saw a blue orb appear at the gate. They just want to have, shits and giggles. They want to do something fun and exciting and explorative. Some men in black came up on them. They weren't the real men in black, but they're like hired security to make sure there wasn't a lot of people breaking in or lingering. But then the security ended up blowing their guard. It's like, wow, you saw a blue orb. These guys never really appear outside the fence. How would you like to see the inside? So the guy and his friend, they got to see the inside, and there's like they got to visit a headquarters called the Lab. Now mainstream, this is the same Skinwalker Ranch, but this one has a different angle. They were allowed to give a tour. It wasn't like a business deal or contracts deal, and that's it. And so he had a different angle because they were first going to break in, but they decided, oh, they didn't want to go to jail, and they lucked out. These guys went in. saw people looking under microscopes and looking under dirt. And then they saw like a camera room where these guys were looking at 24 different cameras or so all over the ranch. And then they saw the weird guy. One of them, all of them were weird in the camera room. But one of them stood up and says, "Hey, we can give you a tour." And he went and grabbed this kid, and they went on. But anyway, one of the men in black and the head camera guy, they were talking about like the things they're doing is trying to figure out their religion. They saw an esoteric angle of it. Well, that was weird. So now they realize, oh God, we got to go on a tour of the kid. They go to an empty house. It's abandoned, of course, and it's all messed up inside. But then they realize that the tour guide with the hammer, that the head camera guy, he goes around in the room and disappears. And the kid says, "Oh, they took him. There's a teleportation effect happening." And then the guys start freaking out, and they grab the kid and they want to go out of the house. It's like, this is crazy. And what's weird is that 6 locks on the door. And it's like, what is there? So there's something, it's a red flag. Well, when they started going back on the road, they got out of the house very quick. It's like, this is weird. This guy's been abducted. We don't know where he disappeared to. They saw it before they went in. They saw this big tree, no leaves. They go back out. The same tree had a bunch of canaries all over them. And it's like hundreds of canaries all over them. And it's like, wait a minute, where did these canaries come from? And so that's weird as beautiful canaries. They go down the road and they start to say, it's like, wait a minute, things are looking different. And because it's like, man, we want to get out of here. This is getting weird. And the kid said, you can't leave. You have to finish the tour. And they noticed the terrain was changing, that the road wasn't being consistent the same, and there's shifting dynamics. And so they went further, and they saw a lake, like a miniature lake. It wasn't a huge lake, it was a miniature, but it's larger than a pond. They saw penguins. I said, what are penguins doing, man? It's too hot out here. This is not even their habitat. They saw the penguins jump in the lake, and it barely made a splash. Then they said, as soon as it's done, the waves just went back to stillness. It's perfect stillness. And then they saw right across the mini lake a guy in a cowboy hat and a horse yelling at him, and he galloped around, and he's mad. He says, "Get away from that kid. It's not who you think it is." And that's the devil himself. And then the kid was getting scared and grabbed one of the guy's legs that was there, Doug and his friend. Well, what's this kid calling himself now? And he says, yeah, that's his junior. And he says, yeah, his last name was Matthew, and he changes his name when he lures different people in here. And then, how's it going, Matthew? Hey, Matthew. And the kid got scared and jumped into the lake. And then after a while, it's like a minute went, and it's like, hey, the kid's not coming for air. So it's like, oh crap, they're like, we gotta save the kid. They look under, no kid, no penguins. It looked like clear water, and it looked like someone was underneath the water, looked like a bunch of students looking upward in an aquarium, like they're touring. And it's like, wait a minute, what? And then the other guys want to look at it and says, oh no, not the same time, because they didn't trust this cowboy who's to yell at. He used to be the previous owner of a ranch. He says, I did this, and they started studying this, and now they gave up on the science. They know that science can't explain it. But they didn't trust the cowboy on there. It's like, look, I ain't going to do nothing. Go back and look again. The same guy looked under again. The other guy did not. And he says, yeah, every time you poke your head, you'll see something different. He poked his head. He looked like he was at the bottom of a pond where they throw a bunch of coins in. And it's like, yeah, every time you look in, it's a portal. You can go see different areas around the world or something, and it's a portal. And we don't even know if some of these places are imaginary or astral world or what, but it's never the same any time. So this is getting weird. Do you know how to get out of here? And the guy says, follow me. Do not look left or right. Follow me on the road. So these guys are starting to see that the terrain was shifting. So this is how powerful these entities are. And they say, do not veer off. Be 10 feet behind my horse. Well, they finally went back because they said, if you go by yourself, you're never going to make it back. This kid's going to if he would have stayed with a kid, he would have had you lost like he's made other people lost here. There's people that have never been found. And So anyway, they started heading back. They finally made it back to the lab, and they went in, and all the scientists weren't there. And so they looked at the lab closer with a microscope. One said Adam, one said Eve. They looked at dirt. It said Cain. I'm like, wait, this is weird. It's getting biblical in here. They went to the camera room. Nobody was in there, and it said Satan on there. Like there's a word, like the word says Satan. It's like this is weird. And so they obviously the entities are screwing with them. They can actually control reality on this ranch. So it's not like anyone's purposely pacing this. The entity's causing this. All right. Then they go down the hallway and they find all the scientists huddled in a circle. They look like their eyes are blacked out. They are making loud humming noises and adoring the entity on a black wall, but facing a circle. The entity was behind them. It looked like a shadow, dark entity where it looked like this energy caving in its shadowy face. And then all of a sudden, the scientists looked up and they tried to get their attention. They tried to invite him. The guy said, "No way." They backed off, and the scientists started running after him. They jumped out the window door, and the scientists were like throwing themselves out the window and door, like they looked like fish, like hopping up on a boat. They're just blind with black eyes, and they were trying to attack him. And these guys started heading out. It's like no way. They said, okay. The cowboy said, head out of the ranch, head back where you came. It's right there in vision. And then guess what? Those parrots that came through, hundreds of them started to fill up the road. They started coming after them, and then the sky started getting dark, and they looked up, and it says a piece of the sky fell out of the sky like glass, and then it looked super dark. That's where all the darkness was coming in. A piece of the sky literally fell down like glass, and darkness started coming out of it. So these may have been visual effects that the entity was causing. These guys hightailed it above the fence, and they felt like they were landing in slow motion, like time slowed down. They almost felt like plastic wrap or something caught their fall. They couldn't believe it. And they said, and then when they're finally out there, it's like, oh my gosh, nothing's there. It's just like when they first walked in, the sun was up again. And they said they felt like they checked the cell phone they left outside, and time seemed to be distorted. They felt like they were in there longer than what time allowed. Time got distorted. And there's one time when they were in there where they saw some cameras. Well, one of the fellows decided to look at the camera closer, and there was like plastic things looking like, hey, these cameras are not even filming anything real. They're filming a plastic background. So they took them off. They took 5 of them off. And when they were in the camera room before they left, they saw those. It's like, wow, they're not even really filming. It's even fake filming. So I don't know. I don't understand what the cameras were all about and why the fake film. But this entity, when they were on their way back to the lab, they found that guy that disappeared, and he looked like he was injured or something. But he says, "Oh, he's everywhere. He's in everyone." So it's referring to that entity is in everyone. He can multiply himself to be multiple people, or he can possess other people. So this entity is beyond logic that's taken over, and and it's been known to, if anyone's kept up with Skinwalker Ranch, it causes all kinds of distortions. There's little dinosaurs that walk around, werewolves that walk around, um, orbs, UFOs, you name it. It's just all kinds of weird entities that they found on infrared. And I'm sure that some of it, if you go to ultraviolet light, you can probably see other activity, but it's just outside, below and above our visual range. But when they want to be seen, they want to be seen. And each one of these places, locations I told you about, has weird stories. But I do consider them gods, ancient gods, and I've actually seen them up in the sky. So if you stare at the sky on some nights and just unfocus your eyes, you can see certain activities. You can see stars pop in and out, and some of them are lights, not necessarily stars. So just pay attention, like stare off into space at night, 2 or 3 minutes at a time. You'll start to see things. You can, and make sure it's not a cloudy day.
Here's
And if you're
something
out,
that here's something that
yeah,
I would probably recommend. So yeah, I would obviously recommend people if they can afford it. do infrared and night vision. They're both two different things. And I'd also advise them to look into something called auric goggles, right? Usually pretty simple to
Yeah.
make. If you can buy them off of eBay too, if you don't want to trust eBay, it's pretty easy. You can look it up on Google. I'll literally look at it right now. You
I used to have some a long time ago. After that, I could start seeing radio waves
nice.
dancing in the sky.
But if you want the traditional ones, you're going to use a dye called, I think it's called dicyanin. And if you want to see it in the red spectrum instead of the blue, you can literally just replace the lenses that have dicyanin with something called red acetate. It's a pretty simple way to do it, so, and
Hey,
if you want to experiment further, you could perhaps put red acetate lenses inside of your night vision too, maybe. So, just, whatever you want to
you know
experiment
these
with.
many of these auras, they're the ones that are creating the authentic crop circles. I've seen one, not personally, but I've seen a video where a crop circle was created by an orb. So these things are actually artists flying around. They, whether it's a message or whatever, they leave sacred geometry inside that for crop circles. So these things are a mystery, and the thing is, you can only communicate with them. That they're all telepathic, and they can read your mind. You don't have to be telepathically enhanced, but you can communicate with them. They can communicate from thousands of miles away. I mean, some people look at you like you're hallucinating, but once you start thinking and tuning in with them, but they don't necessarily choose everyone they want telepathic. You got to be a good mind and heart. They don't just talk to anybody, but I've been able to commune with them, and I've actually got some answers from them, and they may be evolving. I do think they're the same things as the Council of Nine, same thing as the egregores. Now, it's a very fuzzy line between an egregore and an actual self-made entity, like it's real, it's independent. These lines get crossed, they get fuzzy, where you can't just put our man-made concepts and define them so easily. So they said yes, some of them are made,
Hmm.
but yet from our point of view, some could be artificial because they're collective thought forms turning into these guys. And but yet at the same time, you look at them, many of them are around for thousands of years, and so who did we create them or did they create us? It's a matter of perspective. It's a matter of a leap of faith. But this is
That's,
like if you notice that a lot of gods they dwell upon mountains, so
mm,
this makes you rethink Mount Olympus and just mountains around the world. That these gods are real and they do commune and hover high up in mountains.
well, I tell you what, you have given us quite a lot to think about. Next time, I would like to go more over the Council of Nine that you brought up now and in a other video. But for now, I think that we've covered a pretty good amount of information on different paranormal sites and provided people with information as to how to perhaps observe some of the phenomena themselves. So I would like to probably stop right here. This has been the Hermetic Podcast. I thank you all for supporting the channel, and I look forward to having you back, Hadron. And I wish all of
Oh,
you a wonderful day.